So yeah, CSS and interactive email. So it's what we all love, email, right? There's a couple of you there. So just sort of quick show of hands, who's built an HTML email before? Okay, so that's most of you. And who really enjoyed that? Yeah, there's a couple. Actually, also, how many people here would consider themselves an email developer rather than a web developer? Have I got another one? Okay. So email developer is a real job, and that's what I do. Tell my mum. So we'll talk about interactive email. So I work for a company called Rebel Mail, and the company, all we do is interactive email. And so, yeah, feel free to tweet along questions and stuff. So I am M_J_Robbins, and also go Rebel Mail, and it's hashtag the CSS day. So, hang on. Ooh. Is it possible to get the screen down on the viewport down here? I'm not seeing it. Ah, there we go. Perfect. Okay. So what is interactive email? So this is my definition that I came up with. It's an action taken in an email that triggers an event within the same email. So what I mean by that is you click on something and something else happens right there in front of you. It's not clicking on a link to go through to a website, which pretty much like every email does at the moment. Like 99.99% of emails that are sent out are, here's a link, or HTML emails are, here's a link, go to our website and do something. With interactive email, we're saying, here's an email, do something. So how's that done? Well, with the interaction, so this is the sort of the basic stuff that I'm sure you're all very familiar with, hover, focus, and active. So these are what I would call fleeting interactions, because for the hover function, that is only, the code of that hover function is only true for as long as my mouse is hovering over this little code block. And same for the focus, it's only true for while this is focused. If I click anywhere else, that's gone. You can have focus and hover going on separately if you wanted to. And then active is only true for as long as I'm holding down the mouse button. So that's the basic stuff. Then the more interesting, sort of more advanced stuff of that is the sort of the checkbox hack, which is a more sort of static interaction. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the checkbox hack, because you can see up in that corner there, there's a little checkbox, and that's next to a block of code. If that input is checked, and then it's the code which is the sibling of it, then we're going to apply our little transform on it. So there we go. So now that is checked, and even if I go back a slide and then go forward again, it's still checked. So that's checked until I turn it off. So essentially, it's like an on-off button that we can do here. And then the same thing works for radio buttons. We've got 3 here, and I've just done a little variation on the animation just to keep things interesting. So the great thing with radio buttons is that you put them in an array, which you group together by the name attributes. So only one of these can be checked at a time. So as soon as I click on the next one, the previously checked value is lost, and the checked value is now applied to this one, which I have checked. And again, I can click around and do other things while that's happening. So if I just sort of jump around here. So a couple of examples that I'm going to bring in here. So I'll just pull that over. There's one there. There's a gallery and some hotspots. So these are emails. These are in Apple Mail, which is one of the good email clients. I rate them in good and not nice. So here we've got a gallery, and you can see there's 4 thumbnails below a large image. So it's very recognizable as a gallery. I've got a little animation on there just playing, just to sort of encourage the interaction. So when I click on it, then it changes the image, as you would expect. So this is essentially, you've got 4 radio buttons, and when the second radio button here is checked, the second image is showing. When the third radio button is checked, the third image is showing. So this is all CSS-based interactivity. Similar thing here with the hotspots email. Got an image with 6 little pulsing plus signs. Click on one of these, and you get more information about that product. And I'll just close that up here. This animation's a little bit choppy. I have fixed this recently, but I haven't actually sent myself a new version of it. Yeah, so you get the more information as you click through. So again, as that radio button is checked, that information is shown. And the little crosses in the top corner, that's another radio button in the same array. So that is purely there to take the checked value away from the one which is showing the product. So if I just go, oh, let's get rid of these. Oops. Sorry about that. Okay. So how are we linking these clicks to the inputs? Because we're not clicking on the radio buttons. So the obvious way, as you may know, is the input type radio, ID is foo, and then label for foo. So I can put that radio button in the top of my email, and I can put the label anywhere else, as long as it's below the input, and I click on that, and it's going to check the input. That's great. It's simple. That works. It works on the web. In webmail, in email, things work a little differently. So Gmail will strip out every single class and ID that you put into your code, because Gmail hates me. So now, if you look at this in Gmail, it's input type radio, no ID on it. Label for foo, so it's a label which is not associated to anything which is in the same document. So there's no way of checking that input unless I sort of go into Inspector and make it display and then click on it manually. Similarly, Yahoo edits every class and ID, and it will change the ID there to ID equals foo. It's going to change to this, which is ID equals YUI underscore 3 underscore 16 underscore 0. It's a lot, and I cut that down. I took the last sort of 4 or 5 characters off that so I could fit it on the screen. So now you've got the same issue. You've got an ID and a 4 values which don't match. So we can't do it. So it's not going to work. So there's no point in doing this. So the way around it is nesting. So if you put an input inside a label, and then you click anywhere in that label, you'll check the input. So here we have an input, and then there's a div next to it, and then next to that, then we've got a label. So that's a label for the next radio button. So now if I click anything inside that label, it's going to check the next radio button. And then inside that, there's a third label. I can only fit 3 on the screen, and I had to reduce the font size. But yeah, you can stack these up quite a lot. And the code for that, the CSS is it's the same really. It's input checked plus div display block. That's going to show an image, show the image in the gallery. This is a simplified version of what I use. It's just so I could fit it on the screen and make it look all right. But then also we've got input checked plus div plus label plus div border color red. So that's going to put change the border color to red on the thumbnail image. So that's, if you look at the top, you've got input there, so that's going to be checked, plus div, which is the image, plus label, which is the nested label, all the way down to the bottom, where we've got here the plus div, which is the thumbnail, so then we put the border on that. So it's only a very small amount of CSS that can power that gallery, which is quite handy for email, because there are certain restrictions about sizes, which I'll go into later. So this doesn't work everywhere. This is email. We don't get the luxury that you web developers have. So the way we do this, we break down every email client. You think testing in browsers is hard. You think there's a lot of browsers, right? Okay, we break down every email client into 3 groups. It's either static, limited, or interactive. So the static ones are like something like Outlook, and represented here by the code if MSO, Outlook sucks. That's an Outlook conditional comment, same as the IE conditional comment, but that's for Outlook. Outlook, I say it sucks. It's actually quite good. It's consistent. It's predictable. It's bad, but it's predictable. And also anything that strips out the style blocks you can't do the interactivity because you don't have your styles in there. So that's the static. Limited is anything that supports the checked value, because obviously we need that, and the sibling selector. Some email clients do like to strip those things out. And that gives us interactivity. Then if we want to go really cool and do lots of cool interactivity, then we need a general sibling selector and just WebKit stuff. So I'll show you the visual difference, obviously. The static is an image. The limited is a gallery, and it's a functional gallery, and it works, and it looks good, and yeah, that's fine. The interactive is just got a little bit more finesse on it. We've got a little transition between the images. Also, I've got these arrows, so I can just do infinite scrolling across between them. So this is using the 4 here. So these just fall back nicely. These all work together very cleanly for sort of progressive enhancement. Also, the percentages I've got there, the static 19%, limited 18%, and interactive 63%. So if we combine limited and interactive, that's some form of interactivity. That's 81% of email clients support that. So those numbers are taken from emailclientmarketshare.com, which is a website put together by Litmus, and that's based on, I think it was last month's email opens, which is about 1.3 billion opens that they've tracked. And so 81% of those opens had potential for interactivity and probably didn't see it because not many people are doing it. So it's a huge opportunity here. So this takes me into some of the more complicated stuff. So I was building an email a while ago, and I had a lot of radio buttons in it. And I had them all at the top, because this was just for the full interactive stuff I was working on. And the punch card coding concept that I'm talking about is just for the sort of 63% of just the full interactive stuff. So I had all these radio buttons displayed just as I was testing it, so I could see what was happening as I was clicking around. And I looked at it, and it looked similar to that. And I thought, ooh, I know what that looks like. That looks like an old IBM punch card. And that's when I started thinking about it like that, everything started to fall into place a bit more. So the punch card is a piece of card with a series of places where you can punch a hole or not. So the default is there's not a hole in the piece of card, but then you've also got the option of punch, so it's punched or not punched. So the same here, you've got the default checked, or default or checked, or true or false, or 1 or 0. And then when you start putting things together like that, then you start thinking about everything a bit differently. It's like, oh, I'm coding in binary. I'm a programmer now. And this sort of, hang on, cyclomatic complexity, is that right? Yeah. Okay, so I know all about this. So this is really sort of the complex side of things. Here I've got CSS statements. It's a cleaned up version of something that I used, and I also added in a extra little thing just to make it more fun. So here we have item A 3 checked. So if you imagine there's an array called item A, and the third radio button is checked on that. So that's a sibling of item B6 checked, which is a sibling of C2 checked, which is a sibling of D11 checked, which is a sibling of E5, which is not checked. So anything else in E5 could be checked, or none of them could be checked. Then F2 checked, G5 checked, which is a sibling of div, which is wrapping the whole of our content. Inside that, we have a class of foo and display none. So it's, yeah. That's quite a lot going on there. I did add the not in there as well, just for fun. It wasn't actually part of the what I had there. So yeah, it can get pretty complicated. So I'll show you a couple of examples of things I've done. So this first example, this is actually one of the first interactive emails I built, if I can find it. Sorry, I did have all these laid out nicely, and then I moved them. There we go. Oops, no. Come on. There it is. So this is Thwackavol. This one it's got 6 radio buttons in it, so quite small comparatively. You've got a little score counter in there. The game gets progressively harder as you play, and there's a prize at the end. So the rules of the game are simple. You thwack a vole and you score a point, as you can see at the bottom here. And if you whack a mole, you lose a point for copyright infringement. Oops, there we go. I'm just going to complete the game. I know the pattern now. There we go. So you can see it getting faster as I go through that. And then at the end, you've got winner, now visit my site. I didn't put much thought into it at that point. I'd already been working on it for a little while. But the idea is if you were to put this into a marketing campaign, you could do a discount at the end. And there's a lot of talk about gamification in marketing stuff at the moment. So the user has this sort of sense that they've earned their discount. They have a sense of achievement for completing the game. And they're more likely to convert in that case. So then, this one's a little, oh, it is there, cool. This one's a little bit more complicated. This one's got 117 radio buttons. So there's a few more. It also has 4 checkboxes, and then we've got a load of other functionality built into it as well. So we can add and remove products. So if I just click here, I'm going to remove the trousers, and I'll put them back in again. Also, we can calculate the prices. So as I click through here, I'm changing the price in the line total, but also the subtotal, the tax, the discount, and the total price at the bottom. You can see all changing at the same time. So this is here the plus and the minus. I'm just jumping through radio buttons. So I have an array of item 2, quantity 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so up to 5. So there's 6 radio buttons here. And then each one of these is attached to a counter increment, or 5 counter increments. So every time, so if I have, here at the bottom I've got the socks, so there's 1 selected there. So the counter increment of the line total is 12. It's actually 1200 because you can't put decimal places in, so but we'll call it 12 for now. So if I change that to quantity 2, then the counter increment goes to 24. And then that also is applied to the subtotal. And then the tax, if anybody wants to work that out, oops. Oh, okay. And the discount and the total price is all calculated by 5 separate counter increments. So then you can combine the prices of the 3 products in the counter increments, which will then add up and display there in the total. So as we just click through, I don't fully understand it, and I built it. So also, we've got a multi-page layout. So this is an email. So it's a single page, obviously, until you click through and you load a different page. So thanks. So this is pretty simple. There's actually 6. It is. When I explain it to you, it is. It's essentially the same code as the gallery. I have 6 pages here, so I have 6 divs. It has to be divs. We can't use anything more semantic at the moment, still email. 6 divs with the content in, and they're all hidden apart from the one which correlates to the checked radio button. So if I have the homepage radio button checked, that's going to show that content. Then if I check the product 2 page, that hides the home page and shows the page for product 2. And this is just a wrapper. It's exactly the same concept as the gallery. And then inside here as well, we've got a little gallery. So we've got more radio buttons. I can change the color here and just put the size up to large. And then if I go back, you can see this has changed here as well, the color, the thumbnail, and the size. This is because all the radio buttons are at the very top. So I'm clicking labels that are way below, but all the radio buttons are at the very top, so I can change every piece of content below that from a single click, from that checked value. So what else have we got on this one? I've done the edit options. Oh, form validation. Yes. So obviously you can do form validation with HTML sort of built-in stuff. That gets stripped in certain places, so it's not ideal. But here, if I just click the Buy Now button, oh no, errors. So then I'll select the shipping address. So this is radio button drop-down menu. It's not a select menu as you would hope, because it's a lot harder to sort of track stuff from that with CSS. There is a select fallback in there as well. And then, so if you select that, then if anything in that array is checked, then it removes the error message. So the same with the credit card here. And then because I know this credit card because it's with radio buttons, I can put that in here in the text over here, and then check to confirm that, and then click Buy Now. So when you click Buy Now, this is a form. There's a form element wrapping the entirety of this email. So you click Buy Now, that's a Submit button. And that's going to submit all the options that you've selected. So that all goes through, and then it sort of goes through to the server, which will then go, okay, they've selected this color, this size, these products. It knows the price, because the price is all in there, and we're going to ship it to this address, and we're going to charge this credit card. So instead of going through to the website, you just go through to a thank you page. So really, there's no use for a website. Sorry about that. Well, the thank you page and the email sign-up form, obviously, you still need to do those. But I'll keep you in a job a little longer. Okay, so next one. Okay, so as well, we've got analytics built into all of this. So traditionally, email analytics is opens and click-throughs. The opens are tracked with a little tracking pixel. When the image is requested from the server, it's got an ID on it, so you know it's this email and this user, and this email has been opened because that tracking pixel's been fired. It's not that accurate because some email clients don't load images by default, and some people just click through, they have the viewport and just like tab through or use the arrow keys to go through their emails, and they don't actually read them, they don't actually open them. That's what I do. So that gives false information. But the click-through is something which is real, it's something tangible that you can actually, you know that is a true intent from the user, they have clicked through. So we've done a lot of tests with interactive email against static email, and pretty much across the board, the interactive email gets less clicks to the website. But that's okay, that's a good thing, because they get more clicks within the email, so the actual engaged users is much higher, and the conversion rate's higher as well. So the way we track all this, every time a radio button is checked, we've got a bit of code like this. So image 1 is checked, plus star, which would be the label, probably, of the next one, or whatever it is. You put a little something in there to target anyway. So the background image, tracking GIF, gallery, image 1. So then that comes through. You'll also have an ID for the email and an ID for the user. So we know this user has clicked on this image in this gallery. We know every single click that the user has done within the email, which is great. The slight drawback of this is if I click from image 1 to image 2, then image 1's fired, image 2's fired. If I click back to image 1, this pixel's already fired, so there's no way of knowing that I've worked out yet. There's no way of knowing that they've clicked back onto the image 1. But we know they've clicked on it at some point, and we know the order as well. So here we get every interaction, and also each version of each module. So if you have a gallery module, and then you'll have a checkout module, they have slightly different support. Like I said about the static limited interactive, there's some slight variations between email clients, but we can still group the module in those 3 categories. So something might have the gallery, but not the form submit. So you can tell that this user saw the gallery, but they didn't see the form. So it doesn't matter that they didn't submit. You don't need to worry about that. But they did interact with the gallery. So you can break down in the analytics, but I won't go on too much about that, because that's all marketing stuff, and I like CSS. So yeah, we've got some restrictions. Obviously, being email, there are restrictions. The file size is limited to 102 kilobytes. That is your CSS and HTML. It's not including your images, obviously. So that's pretty decent size, but then when you start building in all the fallbacks and Outlook and all that, it does add up quite quickly. So then we do things like minify and uglify to keep that size down. The CSS is limited to around about 12,000 characters in Gmail. I say it's sort of around about 12,000 because they've got an algorithm going on which basically, if it goes over that number, it'll strip out the CSS. but that number changes on every single email I send. And I've spent time sort of adding an extra character to the CSS, sending it, adding an extra character, sending it, working out the exact number, thinking I was being really clever, and then I did it again, and it was completely different. So that was a lot of time wasted. I'm still trying to reverse engineer that, and if anybody knows anybody in the Gmail team who built that, let me know. Another restriction, ESPs can break your code. Email service providers think they know better. You upload your code, they will start stripping out things like CSS animation, like radio buttons, floats, anything like that they don't like, background images. I've seen people strip those out before. They will strip out. Some are better than others, and most of them have a workaround, but it's something to be aware of. Also, the testing of this, as I said before, the testing is immense. And you need a device lab, because you need to test these interactions on the actual devices. Because, for example, Android phones, if you have a text input, an email, you click on the text input, you don't get a keyboard. So you can copy and paste code into it, but that's not a great user experience. Don't know how you explain that in an email. But so you can't use text inputs on Android, which is a real pain. So then you have to sort of filter them out. So you need to test all these things individually, because it might look like it works okay, but it doesn't. And then as well, so I've got about 8 phones in my office in Brighton, 9 including the one in my pocket. I think we've got about 20 in New York, plus I've got loads of email clients on this and every webmail account you can imagine. So it's time-consuming as well. Also, email clients have no beta versions, no docs, no release notes. So, how do we know what's happening? Last week, Yahoo made a change where they changed width to min width, I think it was. On every bit, they just went through all the code and changed width to min width or max width. I can't remember. They rolled it back the next day because it broke pretty much every email. But there's no communication there. We don't know that's coming. We don't know they're putting this through. And that's something I'm working on quite a lot to try and get that communication between email developers and email clients. But it's early days, but I think we've made some progress. Okay, so a couple of fun examples. I'm not sure how I'm doing for time. So this is just me showing off now. Also, these examples are on CodePen. So if you wanted to see those a bit more. That's the puzzle slider there. And where's my phone? Okay. So let's do the phone first. This is an iPhone, so it's a 3D product view, is basically what I'm trying to do here. If I just zoom out, because it's a bit big there, zoom out there. So here we've got a 3D box, essentially, built with CSS, which we can rotate on 3 separate axes with CSS. So the idea here is I've built the 3D box, and then I've wrapped that in 3 divs. Each one has animation, rotation X, rotation Y, rotation Z, or rotate X, Y, Z. And that animation is set to play state paused. So when the button is active, so going back to like one of the sort of fleeting interactions, one of the basic interactions, when this is active, then it's the sibling of the wrapper which contains this div, then it changes the play state to running. So it will play for as long as I'm holding the button down, and then it's paused again when I let go. And that works on all 3 axes. And I've got a little zoom in there, which is just radio buttons. So next one is a puzzle slider. I don't know if you had these games when you were a kid. Little sort of piece of plastic, and you've got 8 tiles in it and 9 spaces to fit them in. And then you just move stuff around like that, and you're trying to make some kind of sense out of it, and hopefully you start to see a picture of Nicolas Cage at some point. So this is just a bit of fun. Each tile has 6 radio buttons attached to it. So you've got 6 radio buttons. You've got position, left, center, and right, and you've got top, middle, and bottom. And from those 6 radio buttons, you can put the tile into any of the 9 possible positions. And then each one as well, you've got a label, little label on each corner just to show how to move them around. Like so. But yeah, if you want to, there's my, let's just move that out of the way. There's my CodePen account there, and these are both on there, and I've got a few other examples. So have a look and have a play around with the code of that as well if you want to. Okay, and next up, I forgot to start my timer, so I think I'm about... Okay, so this is my final slide. So finally, what you can also do, it's just one more example. If I just hit the escape button there, then you can hopefully see this. Somebody might notice this at some point. What's going on? So this whole presentation is within an email itself. Oh, there it is. Whee. So if I just click there, we'll get the buttons coming up. So you can just, if I just jump around, you can see the radio buttons here, which correspond to the pages. So it's the same as the multi-page layout. This is the same as a gallery. I'm just hiding the content which isn't related to the checked radio button. And this is just done with a transform scale 0. And yeah, and it just jumps around like so. But thank you very much. Grab a quick water.
Come on over. Okay. Apparently no one gives a shit about blend modes, and everyone asks questions about email. So we're going to take all of them, too, because we have some time.
Okay.
Okay, I have to read this one. How much time did the email shopping example take to build, like, what the fuck?
Good question. So that one took probably about 3 months because we were building the build system at the same time as building the email. And that's just a concept, that email. That hasn't been put into production. That's not being sent yet. But it is something I'm working towards actually sending, hopefully, by the end of the year. We'll have something like that out. But yeah, it's probably about 3 months to put that one together. But now everything I build is all modular. And it's all sort of built with sort of a JSON context file. So if you want to put a gallery in, you just put a JSON file with 4 images, and then, poof, creates a gallery. So it's much quicker now the way I'm working.
We don't need JavaScript anymore, do we?
Not really.
Yeah.
I'm really bad at JavaScript. I can't write it. I can't work it out. So yeah.
What's the most annoying email client to develop for? Name and shame.
A lot of people say Outlook, but Outlook's predictable. Outlook uses Word as a rendering engine, which is stupid and annoying, but you've got Outlook conditional comments, so you can target it, and it's really easy to work with in that case. But Gmail is the worst, I'd say, because the rendering of all the different Gmail apps, the Inbox app, the Gmail app, if you've got images off by default, it renders stuff differently than if the images are on by default. Inbox and everything. If you've got a Google Apps account, so like a business Gmail account, that renders differently to an @Gmail account. You can do responsive stuff on the webmail, but not on the mobile clients. Yeah, Gmail is a pain.
Okay. You'll cut that out of the video, right? What kind of tools do you use for debugging and testing?
So first of all, it's in the browser. I just sort of test everything as I build it, because the good email clients are WebKit-based and they have good rendering. So I build in the browser, and then I send to all my different mobile phones and test through that. Also, there's Litmus and Email on Acid, which are both sort of screenshot aggregation tools. You send an email out to either one, and they'll return about 40 different screenshots of different email clients, which is really great for debugging layout, but you can't click on that. So it's, yeah, a bit of a pain, but it works. It's time consuming.
Okay. Now, with all those radio buttons and things, what do assistive technologies make of these emails?
That is a very good question. And actually, it is my next big project is getting sort of accessibility into all of this. Email is generally bad for accessibility because of the way it strips out certain things. And yeah, I am working on ways of, I've been reading up on it quite a lot, but I still need to know more. But I think, yeah, Leonie's talk earlier is definitely giving me some inspiration. So I'm going to hopefully try and spread the word as well, because nobody really that I've found that writes too much about HTML email accessibility. I haven't been able to find much. So hopefully try and spread the word a bit there as well.
Okay. How do the nested labels work with the keyboard?
With tabbing through the keyboard, yeah. The inputs, well, depending on the email client, because I've played around with this a bit, and you can't really tab through, Apple Mail, you can't really tab through the content, because I wanted to get a clicker built into this so I could just tab through the radio button, so I could just have a clicker, but instead of having to click, actually click on the thing. So there are more restrictions in the email clients, I think, the way they're built. So yeah, it's not great yet. But the webmail ones will work a bit better for that.
And about how many devices do you have to test on? How many devices and clients?
So I've got about 8 phones, and then additional apps. Sort of, test on the sort of Gmail app, like the native apps on all the phones. Test on the Gmail app, Outlook app, Yahoo app, AOL app, which is now Alto. Then I've got sort of webmail accounts for all of those, and then sort of some of the like Yandex as well, and Orange.fr, which is a real pain. And then I've got a few things on my desktop, Apple Mail, and I did have Mailbox, got rid of that recently because they disappeared. But it's, really, Litmus is a great tool for that, and Email and Acid, same sort of thing. That'll do 40 of them. It'll give you the layout straight away. But especially when you've got multi-page stuff, you can't really test that properly through there.
So you have to have all those clients.
Yeah, you really need to.
Yeah. Do you think there should be a new standard for email, or that it should evolve like HTML and CSS?
I've got slightly mixed feelings on that. I think the good part of me thinks yes, there should be. The slightly bad part of me thinks that making this easier and more, it puts me out of a job. Making it work like it should, because I've spent ages looking into email clients and their different rendering. But yeah, I think there should be some kind of standards, and there needs to be. They have sort of certain issues that the email clients are worried that your CSS in the email is going to affect the things outside of the email. There are obviously ways to stop that happening, but I think just having a sort of a preprocessor that's more generic, so the sharing the preprocessor tools between the email clients would be the step forward to getting this consistency.
Okay, and do you feel any kind of remorse at all for showing people this, and now all the marketing people get these ideas like we can send these mails out, so we're stuck doing all that kind of thing?
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Oops. Okay. Where is Lotus Notes in the static, limited, or interactive, or is there a different category? Horrible.
Yeah, Lotus Notes does really have its own category. It's static, very much static, and it's pretty much in line with the recent version. The recent versions of Lotus Notes, or IBM Notes as it is now, are in line with Outlook, loosely speaking. The older versions are pretty poor.
Does Outlook.com behave a lot differently than Outlook in Office?
Yeah, Outlook.com has its own set of pains and annoyances. Outlook.com is the only thing that doesn't support floats. And there's a few other things they don't support. That's in the static group as well, because they don't support radio buttons. And they apply styles to any labels. They have like a sprite background, which they apply onto any labels you have in there, so you have to be careful of that. And yeah, it's a pain all around, Outlook, all versions of Outlook.
What's the biggest email you've ever designed or developed?
So biggest, probably that shopping cart is definitely one of the biggest. I built a game which has got about 200 inputs, radio buttons in it. But that's sort of, it's more just repeating content, so it's a bit simpler. The shopping cart is the most complicated one I've done so far.
Do your clients pay by radio button?
I'll mention that to the boss. That's a good idea.
How would you detect and fall back from interactive to limited and static?
So there's a few things. The interactive clients, most of them support external style sheets, so you can do it that way. Also, WebKit media query to target the interactive stuff. And then from static to limited, basically I put a hidden checkbox at the top of the email, which is set to checked. And if that, and it's got an ID of interactive on it, if that interactive checkbox is checked and it's a sibling of the table, which is wrapping everything, then I will display the options for the interactivity. Otherwise, things like the thumbnails will just be hidden. But by default, it's all hidden.
Okay, you do know that at least half the audience wants you to send them that email.
Yeah, that one's not available at the moment.
Not going to happen.
But there's a lot of stuff on my code pen if you want to have a look at it.
Yeah, here it comes. What sort of drugs do you have to take to stay sane?
See me afterwards.
They keep coming in. Who keeps doing that? Something real clients are willing to invest in, way more time investment than a normal campaign?
Yeah, it's more time investment, but as I said, we're building this sort of system, so it's sort of, you can populate these templates. Once something's built, it's very quick to put together a campaign. If you just wanted a simple gallery with a couple of drop-downs, I could put it together in an afternoon for you. But we'll build for 2 weeks. But yeah, because of the position I'm in, I'm just quite lucky because the company I work for, Rebel Mail, we do interactive, and we're known as interactive email. So nobody ever asks us for anything static. So people who come to us know what to expect. So it helps on the sales side of things.
Okay, what do you think of Thunderbird?
Yeah, it's all right. It sort of can edge into the interactive or limited sort of grouping, but it's got a few little strange quirks in it, and the usage of it is quite small still. So some things I put the extra effort in to get the interactivity into it, but also because it's not WebKit, then it means adding a lot more in. I've got auto prefixer that goes into my build process, which is just doing WebKit at the moment because that's all that's needed, but then I could expand that, but then that expands all my code. So I'm always on the fence with Thunderbird.
So did you see Harry's talk this morning?
Yeah.
Okay. Is Harry here, by the way? Oh, you're there. Do you see, I'm curious about this, if you see possibilities to take some of the principles that he was talking about, because it was like, for you, it must have hurt looking at the selectors, right? Yeah, exactly. So are there principles that you could take over? Could you do everything with classes, for example? Could you,
Yeah, there's definitely some principles there. There is the big sort of separation between web and email is you have a single page for email. Well, sort of single page, you know. But everything is there, so you don't need to have so much of the sort of. You can be, you can code a bit dirtier if you want.
Because nothing's going to change. The
because
HTML is not going to change.
And I send the CSS and the HTML, and that's gone, and that's not going to change at all. Yeah, they are one package that's sent out.
Is Harry leaving now? Are you leaving? Did we upset you? No. I'm picking on Harry. I think, how are we doing on time? Is lunch ready to go? A few more minutes? Okay. Yeah, are there more questions?
I can show you another.
You want to do that? You want to show,
I'll show you
another
thing.
email? Yeah.
I'll show you another one. This is kind of cool. Oh, where's my mouse gone? There we go. This is one. Oh, there we go. Right. It's a little password field. It's meant to, there's a logo up here, but the reason I didn't show it is because the logo changed color, so you can't see that anymore. So it's a little password field, and then if I type in a password and click log in, access denied, and then I've got 3 attempts left. So then if I type in hang on, password 1. And then I click, and it's access granted. And then fake loading, just, you know. I'll leave that up there.
Yeah, we kind of have to stop here, don't we think?
So that's using the pattern matching through the HTML validation on the input pattern matching stuff. So if the input is valid because the pattern matches, you've got the right password, then it switches the button to click to a different button that will click through to the next page. But the buttons look the same. We just sort of switch them out.
Simple. I think it's with facilities, we were talking about play. And I think this kind of thing comes from probably a pressure from marketing or people who want to do more with email than you actually can. And you've actually come up with some interesting things that normally we would just default to JavaScript for, I guess, 90% of what you just showed. And so you've come up with really creative ways to use the simple technologies with seemingly not a lot of power to do some crazy, crazy stuff. So how did that come about? When did you start experimenting and coming up with that? Or did you get did you see someone doing something similar first?
Well, I started off, I got a job doing email, and I hadn't built an email before. I told them I had in the interview, and they got me to code something. I sent it over, they liked it. So I got the job, and I'd been working there, and I got to a point and somebody told me, oh, you can't use a background image. So, well, I've seen emails with background images. Why can't I use a background image? So I started digging into that, and then I started questioning everything, like all these so-called rules and sort of standards and best practices of email. And I realized most of the reasons are because it's a bit hard, or because you need to put it in twice. You need a fallback as well, and so then I started digging more and more, and then started playing around with animation, and then from animation I got into sort of the interactivity, and then I've messed about a lot on CodePen, and through that I got a lot of inspiration. I steal a lot of ideas from CodePen. It's good.
Okay, so where did the whole radio button idea? Did you steal that one?
That one I stole from CodePen. Yeah.
You heard it here.
I mean, I came up with it. It's my idea. It's completely unique.
I think we're gonna stop now because it's we're filling up a large amount of time. We'll have a little bit longer lunch, but thank you very much for your talk.
Thanks a lot.
That was amazing.
Cheers.
Mark Robbins.